So help us unpack this in another way. But how do we begin to do the work of facing, discovering, and maybe embracing who we are?
I think there's a way in which we have this notion of who we are. It's embedded in us to a degree. I don't think it's a stamp that is indelible, and I think over time it develops as well. There's a both and involved there. But somehow in the development of it, we also realize we might have always known this. But you have to go out and you have to try stuff. You have to go out into the world and put on things that don't fit. You've got to, but when that becomes a mechanism through which you're knowingly avoiding what you've learned, that's when you get into a problem. So I have no problem with people trying things that don't work. That actually is probably necessary.
Sure.
But there comes a point at which it's like dating. All right, you started a relationship.
You're dating yourself.
You're dating yourself. And there's a point at which you tried to put on a role or a character in the world and it doesn't fit. You got to break up with it. But we don't. We end up getting married to it. We develop patterns and habits that make it a lifelong journey for us. And, all of a sudden you wake up when you're 40 years old and it's like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
To go out into the world and start to discover these things is necessary. You have to have a theory about who you are, and then you have to put it to work. And it's amazing how many people will do all this inner work or figure out their being, but they've never done anything with it. And then they go out in the world and they do something with it, and the feedback is so profound that it changes their sense of being, right? So when someone says, this is who I am, and I'm like, well, have you done anything about it? They're like, no. It's not that I don't believe them, but I don't trust them.
Yeah.
Because it has to be activated.
Right.
So there's a cycle there. And that cycle helps introduce us to ourselves. And then there's this idea that a lot of people who talk about the self in the self-help world or the coaching world talk about the authentic self. Find your authentic self or find your essential self. And I think that's right. That is the pursuit. But sometimes there's this layered in idea that you can actually find it. And I think that's a bit dangerous.
Yeah.
Because wouldn't it be awesome if someone could help me find my true self finally?
Right.
Because then I would know that I was doing the right thing. And I wouldn't have to keep running all these experiments. But it turns out that running the experiments is how you find your increasingly authentic self.
Yeah, and it is kind of layered, like you said, and maybe a little even nuanced in that too, because you think of the car salesman job or the role, and how many of us have said, well, that's not me. I would never do that. That's not me. And we assume that job is not me, when really what we're saying is the way that job's been projected to me, I could never do it that way. But those who actually show up as successful car salesmen and women have found a way to overcome the cultural stigma about the bad car salesman,
Right.
and actually do it really well.
Right.